Hi, hello, welcome to the last pet pairing for this year. I haven't really done a pet pairing in a little bit, and honestly I should be busy with other types of videos now in the last few days of the year, but I figured I need to get ready anyway in order to film those videos, so I'm planning on filming my 2023 favorites today, but I have to do my makeup for that, so I figured I might as well just take you along. So we're going to do our makeup together. I'm going to first apply my eyeshadow base as usual, the Inglot Eyeshadow Keeper, which has been my favorite eyeshadow primer for the past, I don't know, over a year. As soon as I started using it after the MAC 24-hour base was finished, which was my holy grail for many years, but for whatever reason started to perform very bizarrely, and I couldn't really rely on it anymore for my eyeshadows not to crease. And honestly, I can't go back to 2008, 9, 10 when I didn't really know of the existence of eyeshadow primer and my eyeshadow would crease all the time. I just expect that my eyeshadows are going to last for as long as I'm going to wear them. For my base today, since I'm not really doing anything super special, I'm just going to be hanging out at home filming videos. I'm going to do something very, very lightweight. I'm going to take this MAC Studio Waterweight Foundation in the shade 25N. No, NC25. Jesus, I already forgot how MAC names their foundations. I don't know what's going on this year, but for whatever reason, foundations that worked for me very well in the past few years, like those more lighter weight formulas, like think of something like this, or even the NARS Light Reflecting Foundation, haven't really been my favorites lately. I don't really know why. I don't know if it's something has changed about my skin, or for whatever reason I have just gone back to enjoying more hefty formulas. I don't really know, and by more hefty formulas I really mean the Estee Lauder Double Wear, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit when I film my 2023 favorites. Spoiler alert. Anyway, so it is today the second Christmas day. We celebrated Christmas very briefly actually with the family on December 23rd because Grandpa is a GP and I think he had a shift on the 24th when we would usually gather, and they couldn't really make it on the 25th. Anyway, long story short, we celebrated Christmas already on December 23rd, but it was sort of short and sweet, not exactly what we had planned, because, funny story, Nicola broke his arm again. I don't know, some of you may not remember this because it was already a few years ago, and I know a lot of you were not following me still at that time, and to be honest I didn't really talk a lot about it at the time because it's not really one of my favorite topics to discuss. But in 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic, Nicola was still a little over 2 years old, and he was here on our bed one afternoon, and our bed is very high. We have, like, comparatively speaking, for normal people standards, a very high bed. So for the Dutchies, you will probably understand this best. So the people that take care of your delivery before you go to the hospital, or take care of your delivery if you want to stay home to deliver at home, they usually require you to put like a little, oh, I'm going to put the concealer, which is the Skin Correct from Dior. They usually require you to put like a little something to lift your bed up a bit so that they don't damage their backs, you know, hunching over you while you're giving birth. And for our bed, it was already so high that they said that was unnecessary. So that is how, like, high up our bed is. And then he was 2.5, and he was and still is a wild beast, you know, a boy, very much into jumping, running, being reckless altogether. So he was on our bed, and then he did something, I don't really know what. He turned around the wrong way and he fell out of our bed. He fell off. But then he fell off in a very unfortunate way, I think probably taking the hit like this with his elbow. And then already the same evening we noticed that he wasn't using his arm, and then the next day we had to call the emergency room, and it was complicated because it was in the middle of freaking COVID. So we went to the ER, they took a picture, and there was a hairline fracture in his bone here. So then he was in a like full-on cast for luckily only 10 days. It was a very traumatic experience, and something that I never mentioned before because probably I just didn't, I wanted to like block it out of my memory. But at the time when they were examining him, they asked a lot of questions about how the accident happened. I'm going to take the Dior Backstage powder in the shade 2N. They basically said that they found the fracture to be very severe for someone his age and from the way he fell. I think nobody really who wanted to understand when I said that our bed is very high. And because he was still at an age when he couldn't talk, and I totally understand, you know, I think they did the right thing, and I think it's always better to you know, be on the side of caution. I don't know what the expression was, to err on the side of caution, whatever. And they told me that I'll need to get a call from Child Protective Services, which was, you can imagine already, your 2.5-year-old is in a full-on cast, which is, you know, one of the saddest things you can ever imagine seeing a little child in. But then to also hear that I'm a suspected criminal was really, like, it really sent me over the edge. So it was not a great time. I'm going to take the Too Faced Laminating Brow Wax. But anyway, long story short, in 2020 he had a broken arm. It was his left arm. And then Thursday evening he comes back from school, and he had a very long day at school. Because he was first at school, then he went to the after school childcare where he goes 3 days a week, and after that they were going to have a Christmas dinner, so he went back to the classroom until like 6 o'clock in the evening, and he was only back at 6:30. The first thing he said when he entered the house was that his hand was hurting because he fell. And we asked him a few questions how he fell, and you know, luckily now he's at the age where he can tell you what happened. So he was at the after school care, and he was climbing in the gym. And from his own accounts, it was not a very high, you know, climbing situation, but he fell. And that's how he hurt his hand. And all we heard from the teachers was that he was not feeling well. They measured his temperature was fine. But we saw a couple of pictures from that Christmas dinner event, and you can even see on the pictures that he's holding his left hand really limp next to him, like completely not using it and only doing everything with his right hand, which is what he continued to do throughout the evening. But you know, we've had the experience before, and because we couldn't really immediately assess how bad it is, we decided to, and he was so tired, he was really tired. We thought, okay, we're just going to let him sleep it off. I'm going to grab a bronzer, and I think I'm actually going to go into a bronzer that I haven't really used in a little bit, which is Bronze Mahogany from Pat McGrath Labs. So the next morning he woke up, once again he wasn't using his arm, and to be honest with you, because we know the drill, we were like, okay, we need to call the GP and go immediately. So we called, and because of his age, people are usually pretty, like, they understand the urgency. So we could make an appointment at the GP pretty much for like an hour from when I called. Like, I called first thing in the morning, and then an hour later we were already at the GP. And then she did a few tests. Well, tests, she just like poked here and there, and then from that test she told us, can't tell you for sure, but I do think it's possible that there is a broken bone and he will require a cast. And I was honestly quite upset. Then we went to the hospital because he needed to get an x-ray. And let me tell you, after 2020, last year when I broke my foot, and now you could let me go in that hospital with a blindfold and I will find the radiology without stumbling into anything. That's how well I know the way by now, which is not something I want to know. Anyway, then they took a picture, and they stared long and hard at the picture, and then they told us that they did actually see, not really, I don't know that they didn't really even call it a break. It is a fracture, like a little bit of like a nick in the bone, in this bone here. So previous time it was here, and this time it was here, one of the two bones here, but there was a little bit of a fracture. And at first they were even doubting whether they want to put him in a cast, but again, I like that they chose the side of caution and just like the safest side, because he's 5 and he's wild, and you never know what where he's going to bump into next or fall into next. So they thought that the safest choice really is to put a cast, like a full-on cast, to immobilize the place so that it really has proper time to heal. Now, before we go any further with this story, I'm going to make a confession. I bought another Gucci blush a couple of days ago. I've been eyeing this color for a while because I think Sophia talked about it last year, and I think she even said it was her favorite color out of the range. And even though it is called Warm Berry, it always looked very neutral in tone to me. Like, certainly it's a berry, like you can see it, it's very much a berry, but it has like very like brownish, reddish, neutralish tones to it, and I was intrigued. So I decided to try this shade because it also looked like such a delightfully cozy winter shade. So here we are trying Warm Berry. I've actually worn the color once, and I know that I need to be very, very light-handed with it because it is certainly not meant for someone of my skin tone, but it is a very nice shade. It has a little bit of neutrality to it, but it is also deep, and like I said, it's just such a nice wintry, like yeah, winter shade for me. I would qualify this as a winter shade. Not necessarily warm or cool. I think it would go with a lot of different types of looks, but certainly something that I would wear more in the winter. Gives me a little bit of like those like red bitten from the cold cheeks, if that makes any sense to you. So they decided to put the cast. They put the cast. Honestly, throughout the whole time, he braved everything really well. He was in really good spirits. He was making jokes. He was just, you know, he thought getting a cast was absolutely hilarious and really fun. So here is Warm Berry for you. I think it's a nice shade. Anyway, highlighter. I'm going to take a oldie but a goodie. This is Venusian Nude from last year's holiday collection. Still one of my absolute highlighters from Pat, especially from her holiday collections. I'm a little bit bummed out she didn't really have a highlighter in this formula this year. But with that said, I have the ones from the previous 2 years, which were both baked, and also the one from 3 years ago, which was in the hockey puck packaging. So I'm probably good on Pat McGrath highlighters for the next 5 decades at least, if not more, probably more. I'm going to spritz my sponge with a little bit of Fix Plus in order to set the foundation. So yeah, we celebrated also very shortly because on top of breaking his arm, it turned out that he had a stomach virus that he had picked up from school. So on Saturday and still a bit yesterday, he was feeling pretty sick. So that was really sad. I think that was even more sad than the broken arm. Like, the combination of the two on a 5-year-old is just not a great sight to behold. Also, just to make it clear, what I'm wearing on my lips isn't going to be the final color for this eye makeup, but what I have decided to do with one of my lip fetish balm, what are these called again? Yeah, lip fetish balms, I don't know. These were released a number of years ago, and I have the shades Flash 3 and the shade Dark Devotion. I bought Dark Devotion, I remember that. I bought Flash 3, I fell in love with the color and the formula, and then I wanted to have another color, and for whatever reason I decided that Berry is the right choice for me. So I purchased, together with my Bronze Seduction palette at the time, I purchased this shade. This is the shade Dark Devotion, a very nice berry color, but I literally never wear it because this level of pigmentation is not something that I go for on the regular. I think Flash 3 actually looks a bit more pigmented than this, and berries are not exactly the kind of colors that I wear a lot. So what I've decided now, after, you know, taking example from what I did with my Fenty lip, whatever it was called, something bomb, no, I don't know, the original Fenty lip gloss. I bought that, never used it, and then eventually I used it up by basically applying it as a moisturizer for my lips during the day and before I put on my actual lipstick. So that's what I've decided to do now with Dark Devotion as well, and I think there's a good chance that maybe by next year this will actually be gone. It's a nice formula, I adore the packaging. I really wish that the actual matte trans lipsticks came in the white packaging because I find white in packaging really classy. Anyway, rambled enough about that. Let's go on to the pet pairing. So the first palette I'm going to take is one of my absolute favorites for the year. I still have to even think about what palettes I bought this year and how I'm going to rank them. You would think that by the 26th of December I would have figured it out, but I haven't. I barely figured out my favorites. So I'm going to use the Bronze Ecstasy Quint, which was part of this year's holiday release. The first thing I'm going to do is take a little bit of this deeper brown, sort of like neutral to cool toned matte, and I'm going to apply that through my crease and outer corner. And yesterday we actually had a really wonderful Christmas evening. Well, not Christmas Eve, but like evening of Christmas Day, because one of my friends from work came over. They are all alone for Christmas because they come from the US and they were not going to go home this year, so we figured that we can spend Christmas together. So we had a delicious casserole meal from the oven, and then we played a very complicated board game. My husband loves board games, and I told him just pick a board game that easily takes at least 3-4 hours and is nice and cozy and relaxing, something like Agricola style. I don't know if you guys played Agricola. Agricola is such a wonderfully zen game. And he picked a game that was actually made by the people who made Agricola, which is called The Feast of Odin. So basically you're a Viking and you have to do stuff. And we spent basically a good like 4 or 5 hours playing that game, with like in between having dinner and dessert and stuff. So that was quite wonderful. I really enjoyed that. Did you guys do anything special for Christmas? Christmas can be a very interesting time. It can be a difficult time for people. It can be a stressful time for people. I know especially a lot of like my colleagues from work, they have to like visit these parents, those friends, and their weeks sound like an absolute nightmare to me. Like I take my Christmas holiday to relax as much as possible, because then I'm not really going to have like a long holiday in the next 6 months before the summer holidays begin. So I don't want to have a lot of plans. I just want to take it as easy as possible. By the way, now I'm going to go into this beautiful plum dark shade, which I think also will fit very nicely with the Gucci blush that I put down, the warm berry one, to just slightly deepen out those outer corners, slightly. I love the textures of these like mattes and satins in her quints, especially this year. They are a whole new level of fantastic. Anyway, so we had a very chill Christmas day, and today is even more chill. Today's, like I said, the second Christmas day. Slept really long. Went out a bit with Nicola because he wanted to go to the playground. Because when you're 5 years old, your primary concern is playing. And even shitty weather and broken arm don't really stand in your way, which is, you know, the kind of mindset you really want to be able to keep as an adult as well. I wish I was able to have his, you know, positive attitude sometimes. Anyway, now I'm going to take a little bit of glitter glue, and I'm going to take my favorite one. This is a NYX glitter glue, and I think I finally discovered the trick of how to use this without popping the packaging open. I think last time I was squeezing out too much, and I was squeezing it here from the middle of the tube, and I think the trick and what I do now is I squeeze it from here, so all the way up, and I put just a tiny bit, because I know that this much is enough to make my eyelids tacky for the application of the metallic eyeshadows. You really need the tiniest bit. I think people overestimate how much glitter glue you really need. You really need just a little bit of stick to your lids before you go in with the glittery shades. You don't need to apply a whole lot of base for those types of eyeshadows to stick well. Next I'm going to take a flat shader brush, and I'm going to basically do my usual, which is apply this one in the like outer portion of the lid, and then this one here in the center towards the inner portion of the moving lid. But I'm going to leave the inner corner free because I'm going to do something fun there. And I'm actually reconsidering what I exactly want to do with my lid shade. I could also potentially just keep it to this beautiful brown gold. But I'm going to apply a tiny bit of that middle shade as well. And maybe I'm going to apply the tiniest bit of that gold shade also over top. I'm going to actually apply this middle shade a bit more with my fingers because it's quite flaky, and sometimes I'm, you know, struggling to get those flakes to come off from the brush onto my lids. I think this is one of those shades that actually works quite well with a finger. These formulas are ones that you have to play around with a little bit. So I'm just going to basically mash those two shades. I'm also going to just take the tiniest bit more of this shade and rub it together with the middle lid shade to create like a concoction of neutral to gold shimmering sparkles. Hope you can see it, it's very, very pretty. I'm going to very quickly finish off the lower lash line because that's going to be super easy. I'm just going to take this shade again, and I probably need to get a smaller brush, but you know what? Leaving on the edge here. And I'm going to fluff that here underneath my lower lashes before I apply the fun inner corner shade, which by now you have probably guessed, knowing my style and based on the picture of which other palette we're going to use. And to absolutely no one's surprise, based on the palette and the color of my sweater, I'm going to go into Divine Droid and I'm going to take Astro Lime here to apply as my inner corner shade, of course. Not really a very unique look that you've never seen before, but certainly a classic that, you know, is recurring. I really like this Astro Lime shade, and I particularly like it as an inner corner highlight. I think it looks glorious as a lid shade too, but there is just something about how magical it looks in the inner corners that I can never get over. Let's put some sparkle on this moment. Honestly, this is probably like a classic favorite Mariam look, a bronzy brown lid with a green in the inner corner. If there's one thing that you should have learned from me by now, it's a brown smoky eye and a green inner corner. Keeping in even more with the berry tones, I decided to pull out for Lisa Eldridge blush, which at least on Lisa Eldridge's website is described as a berry color. I would call it a rosewood, but this is one of my favorite lipsticks that I have obtained in this past year, so it's also a very nice completion to this look because it is an actual like super favorite of mine. I really love how this look turned out, and I think I'm going to wrap up this video now because I still have to do a bunch of talking since we're going to talk about favorites in a couple of minutes. So I will actually see you in a little bit for my 2023 favorites, which I believe you're going to see before actually this video. But anyway, let me know what you thought about this look. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!